All right, welcome back to Waste Some Time with Jason Green. I am Jason Green, bringing you brand new interviews right here on YouTube. Make sure you subscribe, click on the links in the description, sign up for Patreon, become a member of the channel. Okay, today I'm really excited to have Spike from the Choir Boys here. This is an interview that we had to put off for a little while, unfortunately, on the day that our interview was scheduled. Uh, Guitarist and songwriter, co-songwriter for the Choir Boys, Guy Bailey, passed away, and so we wanted to give Spike some time to deal with that. We then saw each other on the Monsters of Rock cruise, and were able to reschedule, and here we are. I've got so many questions for Spike. And what I like about him is he's the kind of guy that he pretty much only needs one or two questions and he will take the rest. A better personality, I'm not sure you'll find. Um, if Captain Jack Sparrow was a real person and it was a great singer, he might be Spike. I'm not sure. But I got so many questions for him because right now in the United States, there's a band calling themselves the Choir Boys. And I don't understand how can that be when I'm talking to Spike right now. And as far as I'm concerned, and many other fans, Spike is the Choir Boys. So we're going to get to the bottom of a lot of things and more right after this. Just wanna waste some time with you. Sometimes it seems too good to be true. Nobody I'd rather waste time with than you. All right, let's welcome Spike.
Hello.
It's
How you
good to
doing?
see you.
Are you in
Good.
Vegas?
Good.
Did you
I'm
just
in Las
mention,
Vegas right now.
Did you just mention Jack Sparrow?
Yeah, I did.
You did, didn't you?
Mhm.
Do you know
Yeah, I feel like
Johnny
you've heard
Depp?
that before.
Do you know what? I'll tell you something, right? I used to when I was living in Hollywood. I used to drink in a place called the Central Club,
Hmm.
and I used to know this guy that used to, you know, play the guitar, and we'd be like, chatting away and everything. And he goes, "Do you know what?" He says, "I'm going to buy this club." And I was like, "Can I swear on this or not?
Sure.
Am I allowed to swear?"
Yeah, go ahead.
No, so I
No, you
don't
can.
usually swear. But
You can swear.
he said, he said, "I'm going to buy this club." And I says, "How can you buy this club? You're just a guitarist." And he says, "No, I act on the side." And I says, "Oh, really?" And he went, "By the way," he says, "I'm going to buy it." And I says, "It's one of the best clubs in Hollywood." I says, "Because it was like a jazz club. It wasn't that whole, the glam rock scene and everything." No, I used to love going in there and having a drink. Then I was like going, "You're not going to change it, are you?" And he says, "Listen, have you met the new Canadian barmaid?" Right? And I said, "No." And he says, "Come and meet her." And through Johnny Depp, that is how I have my son.
Wow. Yeah. Well,
It's all his fault.
it is all his fault. And for people
And
who
he's
might
made me a granddad as well.
That's right. For people who might not know, the Central was a hot spot, and they filmed the movie Valley Girl, among other things, and
I
Guns N'
didn't know
Roses and a
that.
lot of bands. Yeah, it
I used
started
to just
there,
drink
and
in there. I used to drink in there because it wasn't like the norm, you
mhm.
know. Instead of being at the Roxy or the whiskey, I used to love watching the old jazz guys. And did you go there when it was the Central Club?
No, it was the Viper Room by the time I had gotten there.
Right, yeah. Well, he bought it and introduced me to the woman that has my son.
Yeah,
Isn't that
so it's and
unbelievable?
yeah,
But
and that venue's days are numbered. By the time this airs, there could be no more
hey,
Central.
I heard Bonnie's Beanery was being closed. Is that right?
I don't know. That seems insane to me. They've opened sort of a fake Barney's Beaneries now.
Have
They
they?
have different ones. Not I think the original
Right.
one is the Jim Morrison one is the one you need to go to.
Yeah.
Um,
I lived in Hollywood for quite a while. You know.
I found that
Yeah.
interesting about your career that you stuck around for quite some time and you did some you recorded a lot of stuff and you also did the movie soundtrack with CC DeVille for the
Oh my
Pauly
God.
Pauly
Yes.
Shore movie.
Yes.
You were the Hollywood guy for a little
Do
bit.
you know what? Because we'd done the Monsters of Rock tour, and me and Cecil used to get on so well. And I had a house on Beechwood Drive, and but I basically lived at his for about 3 months at one point.
Mhm.
The House of Horrors, as it was then. But we had such a laugh, and I remember because I did do that. That we would have there was a what we used to do was we'd have a jam, right?
Mhm.
And he had a room with he had the most amazing house that looked right over Hollywood, but he lived downstairs, and it was like all I don't know what you call them, all them pointy guitars
Yeah,
that
that
people used
I've
to
heard
play
that
back
term
then.
before.
And that would be his carpet.
Hmm.
And I remember, I know that you mentioned Guy Bailey just before as well, and I took Guy Bailey up one day, and we were jamming, and Guy Bailey was just like, he went, Cecil, he says, because it's Cecil, he's a brilliant guitarist, and playing with English people, he was taking on our vibe, like we sounded like humble pie,
Hmm.
you know, and he was like, and Guy Bailey said to him, he says, Cecil, he says, why? He says, you're actually an amazing guitarist. He says, why do you play the shit that you play? And he went, Guy, have a look around you.
Yeah, very
But
well.
Poison, do you know what? Poison are a great band, man. I thought that on that, I was so pleased when they done the stadium tour. Everybody told me that they were the best band.
That's what I heard from everybody. Yeah.
And do you know what? Cecil is such a lovely man. He really is. And we were going to do a band together at one point on, I think it was Atco, and I got offered so many other jobs to do. I even got offered the job, and Frankie goes to Hollywood for God's sake. But
Hmm.
when Holly Johnson left, but it's like the Quireboys has always been my band. I would never ever have left it, even though I got offered a hell of a lot of money off them. But I was making a hell of a lot of money at the time anyway. So, but I would love to have been in a band with Cecil, and that's
Yeah. Well,
it was fun. My dad, um, funny enough, I didn't tell my dad, and he's seen me on the TV for that song, "Hey Good Looking,"
mhm.
and and everybody slags me off for it, but I tell you what, it was the best time, and we had such a laugh. That's what rock and roll's about, isn't it?
I would
Having
think so.
fun
Yeah.
and having a laugh. And I love Cecil to death. And when they toured with us in Europe on the Monsters Rock tour, we had such a good time. And I've only got good things to say about them guys. They're really, really nice guys.
Yeah,
Do
absolutely.
you
And
know
people can
them?
say, uh,
You seem to know everybody.
it's funny. I do know everybody, but not those guys so much. I mean, I've seen them in passing, but don't know them that well. They haven't been on the show, so but could
Okay.
happen.
I hear he's
Um,
found God.
well, who did? Brett or Cece?
I don't know.
Oh,
I love
well,
him no matter what.
wasn't
I love him to death. I really
yeah.
do. And I'm glad
Spike,
he's happy now.
Spike, we got to address the elephant in the room because there is an elephant in the room first, and then we can talk about some more positive things and what you're up
The
to. And
elephant in the room.
yeah, it's
Okay.
here. So I mentioned in my introduction that the Choir Boys, to me, by the way, was the London Choir Boys when I was growing up in New York City. That's the name
Yeah.
uh, that I knew the band as. But you were always the face and the sound of that band, and also obviously the co-songwriter with your late partner Guy Bailey. And
Yeah.
so all of a sudden they have this tour here that's going on with a band called the Choir Boys. This has been going on for a little while, and a lot of fans have been upset by it. A lot of promoters have been upset by it. People feel a bit duped. They claim that they fired you. I'm not sure how this is possible. Can you explain to me how this is happening?
They did fire me. Okay. And I don't know what they were thinking or what they were expecting from the whole, you know, I think the main trouble was, I was, you got to remember when I started the Choir Boys when I just turned 17 with Guy Bailey. And so we'd done all, and we'd been through, different members like Ginger and different people, lots of different drummers and things like that. But when the band reformed in 1999, when I got a deal with Sanctuary Records, am I going off track here?
No,
about this.
I think this is still on track.
Am I going off track about how everything came about? It's like the Choir Boys has always been mine and Guy Bailey, Nigel, Mog, and Chris Johnson's band. We started that in 1984, 85, something like that. And for what they're doing now, I know that it carried on. I'm not explaining myself very well here, am I?
No, I think you.
Where do I
think
start? And write a book about this. It's just yes, I did get fired, right, from my own band.
What was the reason?
They did have a company. Well, apparently it had been going on for years. I didn't understand this, but not just months. The trouble was mentions, like, why we do shows? Why? It's bringing the brand down. We're better than this. All I'd hear was like Spike starting again, Spike starting again. There was a tour of Germs, which just looks really bad. I would do them shows acoustic with Tyler. I said, mate, the brand is bigger than this, and they didn't like the way that I was. When we first got back together.
Trouble with StreamYard, we switched to Zoom, modern technology that I'm not so good at. But we were talking about, there's a band in the States calling themselves the Choir Boys. You were telling me about the original guys, the lineup that you put together with Guy Bailey. And when we cut off, you were talking about sort of the second coming of the Choir Boys. I feel like the 2000s was a different version. Guy Bailey was.
But you got to remember, I started this band when I'm from Newcastle, and I'm from up north, and when I was a kid, at 16, I moved to London. My dad took me to London to get a job, basically, and as you did in them days, I mean, it was really tough, and walking around every building site in London to get a job because my dad didn't want me to be. I remember the day you walked in a place called the Monkey Bar in Newcastle, the pub we used to drink in. When I was 16, he went, right, I'm taking you to London. You're not going to end up like these pissheads, And he took me to London and I walked around with him. And God bless him. He walked me around every building site until I got a job. And I never ever came back after that, apart from until recently, or when I made some money.
Mm-hmm.
But and then I so 16, I was living with Guy Bailey. I met him in a pub, the Market Tavern, which is the Oval Cricket Ground, and he gave me a room in his flat, his apartment. And then I got him a job working with me. And we used to so we were working at St. James's Army Barracks, which is right next to Buckingham Palace. And we never mentioned music for some reason. It was just that we just used to go out, we used to drink, play pool, work, have a laugh. And then when I think I turned 17, and my dad came down from Newcastle, and he brought my guitar. And Guy's flat used to overlook the Oval Cricket Ground, and he brought my guitar down, and so my dad would watch the cricket out there, and I'll never forget it. I mean, I must have told the story a few times, but Guy Bailey said to me, he says, "I didn't know you could play the guitar." He says, "I'll play the guitar." He says, "Yeah." I says, "I love Chuck Berry. I love the Rolling Stones." He went,
Connection.
and do you know what happened? We actually wrote England were playing the West Indies on the cricket. We wrote "How Do You Feel," "Roses and Rings," "I Don't Love You Anymore." We wrote 5 songs in that week. And my dad turned around and went, "You know what? You should start a band together." And that's how the Choir Boys came about. And it was like, well, what we're going to call it? And I'd watched this film about American police, and it was called The Choir Boys with a C, you know? I said, "Choir Boys is a great name," you know? Then he went, "All right." And then we were working on the building site, and we actually used to dress the same way that we do now, which is quite bizarre. And we were working on the building site, and he said, and this Irish guy come up, and he says, "Are you guys in the band?" "Oh, yeah." "What's the name?" You know, I says, "We're called the Choir Boys." And he goes, "Well, that fucker in the band," point the Guy Bailey, "you should be called the fucking Queer Boys." And that's how the Cube. And we went, what a great name. And that's how the Choir Boys came about.
It was called Queer Boys for a little bit, right?
Queer Boys, it was called the Queer Boys for a hell of a long time. People forget this. I mean, we were really, it was going great. You know, we were playing the Marquee. We had basically Bush at the Marquee Club was amazing to us. And we would play any venue that would have us, you know. And then, but when we started playing the universities as the Queer Boys, there was so many protests that at the time, if we'd have been big, people would have given us loads of publicity. But there was so many protests about us being called the Queer Boys. And when Nigel Mogg joined the band, we were in the after we'd done a gig at the Marquee, we were in the Samaritz, and Lemmy was there. And Lemmy went, he said, "Lads, if you want to get on top of the Pops, which is the biggest show in England, right, at the time, you got to change your name, because you're not going to go anywhere with the Queer Boys, you know." And then, Guy, we had the equipment stenciled with Queer Boys written on, and Guy Bailey went, "You know what? If we just change the O and U and to an I and an R and an E, call it the Choir Boys." So that's how it all came about. Yeah, I doubt that the band that you're talking about that is playing in America would have a clue about how we got the name.
That's, you know? Spike, you make a good point. They might not even be familiar with some of that history because they weren't there, as you mentioned.
And they weren't, and none of them were there when we wrote these songs. The songs that they're playing, that I just don't understand the whole how they have the nerve to do it. You know, I mean, none of them were around when you know they did. You know, the first album. You know.
If you look at
I mean, Ginger was in Ginger from the Wild Hearts was
that's right.
Tom Gold was. We had a lot of different drummers. The first lineup of the Choir Boys was Chris Johnston used to play the bass.
Mm-hmm.
And then Tom was the guitar, the other guitarist with Guy Bailey. No, actually, I was the first guitarist. We used to rehearse in this the community centre in Brixton, and it was like £1.50 an hour. And I was actually the guitarist, because we wrote the songs, and then we were looking for a singer. That's what Guy was. Let's find a singer, because I was going to play guitar. And then when we were in Brixton at the community centre one night, I broke all the strings on my guitar, and I never sang through a mic. And he went, "Well, we've written these songs, and you've been singing them. Try and do it through a mic." And I'd never sang through a mic. And then all of a sudden it was like, "Baby, baby, baby."
Mm-hmm.
And I've discovered this voice. Because you never sing loud, do you?
No, and it's amazing that you find your voice.
That's like that. And then from that day on, Guy Bailey went, "You're the singer."
Mm-hmm.
And then we never wanted another guitar. We were going to have it. There was me. It was Bill Coyne, actually. It was the drummer at the time. Guy Bailey, Chris Johnston was playing bass. And we were out, and Guy Bailey, he was like going, "You know what would make the band would have a piano player." And then he went, "Chris can play the piano." And Chris Johnston went, I can't play the piano." He says, "But you can play C and F, and you can play chords, and you can go ding, 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 ding. That's all you have to do." Mm-hmm. And then I bumped into Nigel Mogg in London at Dingwalls, and he was in a band called, do you know what they were called? Kill, 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 Faster Pussycat.
Okay, yeah.
Isn't that weird?
At its time.
And then we used to have such a laugh, and I says, "Come down and play with, and do you want to come down?" Because he looked great. And that was the major thing, that he looked like a choir boy, or a queer boy. And he came in, everything clicked. Chris went on the piano. Nigel will tell you himself he wasn't the best bass player in the world, but when us four got together, it all clicked. Everything clicked with the songs that we done. There weren't a million chords, as you know. We only 3 or 4 chords, and that's how the band first started. We actually done so many shows with just us, without another guitarist. We even played. I think we played Reading Fest. I mean, you got no idea. You're talking when we were so young. I mean, Nigel's just a little bit older than me. Guy and Chris are a few years older, but it was like we had a determination to do this, and then. But we we played a lot as just us. Just the 5 without another guitarist. And then Ginger, we got Ginger in. And through Phil Mogg was actually from UFO.
Oh.
He was our first proper, like.
How wild.
Because he's Nigel's uncle.
Mm-hmm.
And it was funny. I went to see Guns N' Roses the other night, and we were talking about it because we had done so many gigs and so many shows, and I remember we had Ginger in the band at that point. And we'd sold out the Dominion Theatre in London. We'd done 4 nights at the Marquee Club. We were doing really well, and it was like, well, nobody's interested. But we had a really good following. like really all over the country, because we used to play constantly. We had Adrian Purser, who was our agent. One thing, if young bands are watching this, get yourself an agent. You know, I feel sorry for young bands today because there's not that many places to play, and all you need is the back of a transit van. You know, I'd be on stage going, is there anywhere we can stay tonight? Can we stay? And we used to end up staying with all the punters in their houses and stuff like that. It was when Guy Bailey was in the hospital and Chris came down, we were talking about how they were the greatest days, you know, how they were the greatest days of, and it was like an apprenticeship for us of how to deal with audiences, how to do this, how to do that. And it doesn't come overnight, you know. I mean, we've done that for about 5-6 years before we eventually, you know, the turning point was when Phil Mogg got us the show at Hammersmith Odeon with Faster Pussycat and Guns N' Roses. You know, I remember when we first met them, we headlined the marquee the night before they played, and Bush, who owned the marquee, said, "Come here, you gotta listen to this band." I didn't know a sound check, and they were playing a whole lot of Rosie. Mm. And then we all, instantly all got on. Plus, they nicked all of our girlfriends because they were American, right? But we got them back.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's so much that I could tell you that it wouldn't even, me and Nigel were talking about it, and we got offered like a 3-book deal, right? Because it was like what we went through in the early days. There's not many bands that do that anymore. You know what I mean? And how you're building up a following, the love of what you're doing, of constantly writing, constantly having a laugh, constantly doing any show that you can get, you know? Mm-hmm. And so we were having we were just talking about all that and how that was probably the best times, you know? And then all of a sudden, we're on top of the pops.
Yeah, Lemmy was
huge,
right.
You know?
Yeah, Lemmy was right about it. Why you guys ended up firing Ginger, is that right?
Ginger, you know what? I love Ginger. He was, when Guy passed away, he's one of the first people to call me. You know, Ginger is a force unto himself. You know, he's such a talented songwriter and everything. But, from day one of the Quireboys, the main guy wrote the songs. Mm-hmm. And I don't think that he, and plus Guy Bailey would be like, Phil Mogg wanted a harder edge to the Quireboys. He thought we should have, obviously with him being in UFO, and he wanted us to have like more solos, and he wanted a bit more like Humble Pie rather than the Stones or whatever, how we portrayed at the time. Yeah. And we never fell out with Ginger. It was just, we knew that he had a vision in his head of what he wanted to do. And I like to think that we were like a part of him doing the Wild Hearts, because when we came back from Los Angeles and we were young, so young, and there was so much drinking, so much, well, in England, we couldn't afford cocaine. It was speed, and but I love Ginger to death, and I was so happy for him that when he got the Wild Hearts together and done so well. And you got to remember, all of our families were around at that time as well. So I know his family really well, and then he knows mine, and there's never been an issue really. I think it's just the press in England. The press in England want to make a mountain out of a molehill the whole time, you know. But I was very grateful when he called me about Guy Bailey, and we had a good chat, and everybody loved Guy Bailey, you know.
Well, that's
And then Guy didn't really want to have another guitarist after Ginger, because the Guy would have to explain. Guy was a very, very talented musician, but you know, I know that, you know, people might go, "Oh, the Choirboys is only 3 chords or 3 or 4 chords," but he knew so much about music, and so he would tell Ginger, you know, if I'm going to play this, you have to play this back to me, right? You know, and so we wanted that like Rolling Stones vibe of how you play the 2 guitars off each other, but he would show Ginger what, you know, basically what to play off him, and then go, Ginger, you do a solo or do whatever you want to do, but within the songs, let's keep everything sparse. Let's keep, you know, so we're not overpowering each other, and which he'd also done when Griff joined the band. So it was like, it was one of them, you know, Guy was very shit at what he was doing, and he knew exactly. And Ginger knew that he wouldn't have got a chance to write a song as well, because it was me and Guy. We had, all we thought about was the Choirboys, you know. All we thought about was the band, and you know, from what we dressed like to what we dressed like was Steptoe and Son, which is, I think, Stanford and Son in America. Go ahead. You know, and you know, the gypsy heritage within our families and what have you. And it was so easy to dress like us, because you used to go to a charity shop, and you could buy a pinstripe jacket and a pinstripe waistcoat for like 50p or whatever, and wear carnation to make you look a bit more, you know, to make you a bit smarter. And then, you know, everybody, when we used to play the shows, everybody started dressing. We all dressed the same. And it was a wonderful thing that it was like, you know, it wasn't just the music, it was the camaraderie with the fans, and they weren't fans, they were friends, you know. It was like we all started together and all built that up, you know. And I see people now all the time, they go like, Spike, if it wasn't for you, I would never have met my wife. I wouldn't have my kids. You know, and I'm like, don't blame me. You know, but you know, I think people forget how hard it was. I mean, can you imagine your son at the Dominion Theatre and you can't even get a record deal? You know, and then all of a sudden we got an independent deal with a thing called Survive. Ginger was in the band then, and the first singer was There She Goes Again. And that's how we started, but we didn't realize that within that contract that EMI actually owned Survival Records. And then one day we got a letter through the post saying, we have picked up your option for £1.50. That's how it used to work back then. And I was like, oh my God, we better get a proper manager. And by then, all of the American managers were flying over or calling us and everything like that. And then entered Sharon Osbourne.
Yeah.
And, you know, with us being English, and all the other American managers were like, they all had about 10, 15 acts, you know. And she was English and she only had Aussie. And she certainly got us more than £1.50 when she renegotiated the deal. So, yeah.
All right.
But that, you know, that's the call of the Choirboys, what we went through, and how we always played, and from having the bar on stage, from having the audience up on stage with us, having a drink, we wanted them, because that was the whole point of the Choirboys, was to make it a fun evening and to, you know, to have fun, to get everybody involved, and basically play pure English rock and roll, you know,
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
nobody was doing it.
Now they tell it.
You know?
It says here we have 8 minutes. I think we could start another one if we go.
Yeah, we'll start another one.
But so what I want to know is we talked about the beginnings of the Choir Boys. We talked about who wrote the songs. Obviously, you and Guy Bailey.
Yeah.
As I was saying, that there was two different chapters in the 2000s. You had a different lineup. Guy Bailey wasn't really part of those albums. You did record a lot of
Well,
them.
After we didn't actually split up, and I don't know why people are saying that we got dropped from the. We didn't. We you got to remember that me and Guy and Chris and Nigel had been on tour since we were 17 up until we were in our 20s, and we hadn't stopped. And when we got our deal, we were working. I mean, we used to do matinee shows, evening shows, matinee shows, especially in America, and we hadn't stopped. And it was like, God, it was so, and especially the lives that we were living on tour constantly. I mean, we had nowhere to live. You know, all our girlfriends left us at that point because we were on tour. Where are we going to go? What are we going to do? We just spent our lives on tour. And then at that point, we went, look, we have to have a break because we're going to die. You know, it was, and plus at that point, I was going to have my son, and Guy went off his way, and we all just went our separate ways. And I never thought it was going to stop. But then Guy Bailey, I was like, Guy, and he was like, I can't. I just don't want to tour anymore. I've had enough. It's just we've been doing it for like years. You know, people forget. They only think that we'd been touring since 89, like, or 1990 up until 93. No, we hadn't. We'd been playing for years before that. And it was like, we made the right decision, and we all were still best friends, you know. And then when I got the offer, I moved after that, moved to Los Angeles, and everybody was doing different things. I started another band with the guys from Burning Tree, Donny and Muddy, and Ted Hutt, called God's Hotel. Trying to do that. I was doing a soul band as well, and just doing different things because the whole music scene had changed as well. But Guy Bailey, he was like, I shan't tread the boards anymore, dear boy. He didn't want to tour anymore. And Chris Johnson had went off and done his, you know, had kids, son, and everybody was just done separate things. And but I still wanted to carry on playing. And,
Spike, I hate to get off course, but I gotta.
Should we go back on?
No, I got it. We got a minute, but I gotta ask you a story. We're talking about Guy Bailey and some of the fun things. Tell me about Guy Bailey's dog.
The sniffer dog.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, when we could afford, stuff that's better than speed, that we'd be like, where's this gone? What's happened? And he says, do you know what? I'm going to buy a sniffer, a retired sniffer, drug sniffer dog, to find everything in the morning for when we wake up. Did I tell you that?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's true story.
So he got one, right? And the dog could find it. Right?
Yeah, the Spaniel. Yeah, he's our best friend.
Mm-hmm. And so you never lost your stash again.
No, it wasn't hard. We never smoked pot. we used to like things that picked us up. That was Lemmy's fault.
Yeah, but, well, he made he lasted a long time like that.
Yeah. Do you know what? It's like when you're on tour and everybody's like going, oh my God, you must be like exhausted. And no, you go off, you know, I'm the fittest I've ever been. I can't wait to get back on stage properly. and kick that mic stand up in the air and do my shows, you know. Still a few years left in me yet, mate.
I think it's what keeps you alive. You're a shark. You got to keep swimming. If you stop, you know, that's not what you were put here for. Now, so I listen. I haven't forgot. We're still going to get to the bottom of a few things, but first, Spike just told me he lived in Las Vegas, which I couldn't believe. It's such an odd thing. He was only here for about 3 months, but
Yeah.
he will tell me a Rat Pack story. I can't pass on that. So,
But no, I lived there. I was there for about 3 months, and I did not see daylight for 3 months of my life, right? Which is pretty good, really. But my ex-girlfriend was working at the Riviera, and so I got to meet a lot of people there. And I went to see the Rat Pack one night. So I could get in all the shows free, and I didn't realize that the Rat Pack. I went in. I was sitting at the table at the front by myself, and there was this beautiful older lady, bit old, probably my age now, and she was stunning. And she says, "What are you doing?" I said, "Oh, she says, "Oh, my husband is the producer of the show." And I says, "Oh, really?" She says, "You're going to meet him in a minute." And I says, "All right." And we were having a really good laugh and everything. And she said, "Yeah, he bought the script a few years, like quite a while ago." And I says, "What do you mean?" She said, "The script." And I says, "What?" She says, "Well, when you watch the show, they come out, it's going to be Frank Sinatra's birthday in like 1959 or something, right?" And apparently the Dean Martin couldn't ad lib. So it was all scripted. Every show was scripted. And this guy, her husband, had bought the script from Frank Sinatra's birthday. I don't know if it was in the late 50s, I think it was. And she went, "He's playing Bobby Darin." You know Bobby Darin?
sure, yeah.
Because Bobby Darin was on the script of how to do it. And it was so racy, you know. I mean, they were talking. It was really hardcore stuff. It was one of the best shows I've seen. And then the guy who came and sat opposite me, and then the guy who's playing Frank Sinatra goes, "Come on, let's get it." It was David Cassidy.
Hmm.
He used to own the show in Vegas, and he played Bobby Darin.
How crazy that all
night
this
and
was
got up,
happening.
and
Yeah.
it was like, oh my God. So
Yeah,
so I met David Cassidy.
you had a Partridge Family.
I used to go to Name Droppers Anonymous.
Mm-hmm. Nothing wrong with
You
that.
never guessed who was there.
Oh, go ahead.
Did you get that?
I got it. Yeah.
All right.
So, Spike, we got to get to the the elephant hasn't left the room. We're still trying to figure out what the hell happened. We know how the Choir Boys were formed. We knew that who it started with. We know who wrote the songs on the first two albums. We know that in the 2000s there was a different version of Choir Boys. Guy Bailey did not want to tour anymore. We know that
Chris.
Yeah,
Rudy.
and we know that just a couple of years ago, I believe it was before one of these Monsters of Rock cruises, Guy Griffin says he's firing you, and this is where we're all confused.
Well, I did get fired from my
How
own
did you
band.
get fired from?
I got fired in a letter.
Yeah.
The problem was I created too many problems, because I was like the band is going downhill. And I says, you know what? This is not right. The brand of the Choir Boys is being ruined.
Right.
And you know, I don't want to go on tour and play 15 shows in a row one day, or 15 shows in it's just ridiculous. Plus we were, you know, it got to the point where we were playing clubs that I could have played acoustic with Tyler from the Dogs of War or something, you know. And I had done that in the past. I'm like going, this is not right. And every time I brought anything up, Spike's starting again, Spike's starting again, you know? And it was just getting more. I don't know what they expected. And I've heard, I've seen, I'm not on social media, you know, but I get sent everything.
Mm-hmm.
And I've seen the interviews, and you know, from what they were saying, it wasn't just months of problems, but years of problems. I was like, what? I was like, so hold on a second. You know, I was in the band before I started the band, before any of them were in, and would do 2 shows a day. You know, matinee, evening. We do everything, and I was like, going, why? The whole. Basically, I just was asking too many questions because the band was going downhill. It was going downhill, and I could see it in front of my eyes. And Guy Bailey, all my best friends would tell me, and I'm like going, I'm not going to do this, you know. And it was like, so you're not going to go on this tour? And I'm like, no. I says, well, just let's rethink the whole thing, because you know, one of my best friends is Luke Morley from Thunder, and you got to remember that the Quireboys were the second biggest selling act on EMI, next to the Pet Shop Boys. The Quireboys sold more albums than Thunder, the Wild Hearts, the Almighty, all them bands at that time put together. Mm-hmm. You know. And when I was doing the Frankie Miller album, the Free House, and I was doing, and all my friends were like going, "Oh God, Spike," you know. It's like, you know, Thunder are playing Wembley Arena, and you're playing the Dog and Duck down the road. What the fuck is going on? It wasn't just me; it was everybody around me, but nobody would listen to me, you know. And everything from the writing of the songs. I mean, you know, I seen this thing that's saying that I didn't write any of the songs. I didn't write it. Do you know what? Let me, for a start, the way I wrote with Guy Griffin was completely different to the way I wrote with Guy Bailey. Guy Griffin wanted to do it in a, you know, I give him credit where credit's due. You know, he'd come up with a title, and then I'd work around the song or whatever. We were doing our fight, and you know, but it was completely different how I worked with Guy Bailey, where we'd write actually together and write it like a play or like a, you know, sometimes I played the guitar, sometimes Guy Bailey. And a lot of people didn't realize that I actually can play the guitar until I started doing these acoustic shows. You know, I got taught, I was classically trained from the age of 11. So it was like, and a lot of people didn't realize that, as I was telling you earlier, I was going to be the guitarist of the Quireboys until I broke the strings, you know? So I did come up with a lot. The Quireboys were never about riffs when I was with Guy Bailey. You can play every song that me and Guy Bailey ever wrote together as a country song. It's not about the riff. It's about the song in itself, you know? And for them to say that I wasn't, I'll tell you what, Jason, what, if they want to be the Quireboys, right, let them play all of the songs that I have nothing to do with, right? That they think that I have nothing to do with, from, you know, lyrically, melody wise, or anything. And how many songs do you think they're going to play?
It's going to be a short set.
Well, you know what? At the end, it got to the point where I said, Griff, I'm not, you know, you sing it. Keith Richards sang the song, you know, would sing a song on a. I said, you sing it. I said, I don't want to sing that. If he'd written a full song himself or whatever, and I said, well, you sing it, you know, let them. There's no. Me and Guy Bailey, Chris Johnson, Nigel Mogg went through this. a lot together. You know, they weren't part of how the band was done. You know, I was with Jim Cregan, I was with Jim Cregan, who produced our first album, who is Rod Stewart's right hand man, and because he's been helping me with the new Quireboys album. Because I thought, you know, before Guy passed away, I says, you know, let's get. And Jim's been helping me a lot. It's like 7 o'clock. You have the song 7 o'clock?
Yeah.
That never had a chorus. We played that for years. And it didn't have, it's 7 o'clock, time for a party. But Jim, as a producer and as a great songwriter, was like, you know what, this song's brilliant, but it just needs that little something else. And I remember when we were in the studio going like, you mean like this? It's 7 o'clock, time for a party, right? That's how it all came about. And I was like going, so it'd be great to work with Jim again. And Guy Bailey was so excited about working with Jim again. And we've been having lots of conversations about the new songs that I wrote with Guy before he passed away. And Jim was like going, this is the best album that we've done. And I really do believe that as well. But I don't think that if they want to be called the Quireboys, then, you know, they should be ashamed of themselves, really. You know, I know that I done albums with them and everything like that, but let them do them. Let them do them songs, but do not play the songs that me and Guy wrote. And it wasn't just me. You know, people think that I have been upset about this whole thing. I haven't. I tell you who has been upset was Guy Bailey, Nigel Mogg, and Chris Johnson. Because they have no right to do this. And obviously it's taken out of my hands now because, you know, it's all going to be dealt with. You know, I give them an opportunity. 5 times I've given them an opportunity to sort this out. And if they don't want to speak to me, then fair enough. They were saying I didn't want to speak to them. They obviously had their plan of what they were going to do.
You can
have anything that they say about me, Jason. Mm-hmm. You know, that I was like drunk or whatever. You know, I remember, I know the shows I fucked up, right? And in my long career, the 6, and I know them very well, right?
Exact number, yeah.
Especially Chicago, with Donny V and Derek. That was a hell of a night. So I hold my hands up, but I think that anybody can look on YouTube and have a look at me and say, well, saying I forget the words. I didn't want to do these songs. I didn't want to do that. You know when you write a song, but the words are. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm.
Well, Spike,
any singer out there, any songwriter knows what you've written, what have you done, where you've been at that point. You know, I mean, to say that I didn't write, I must admit, towards the end, it was just killing me. And I was like, going, this is just not right. This is not right. It is not. I was forever asking Guy Bailey and I mean, you know, Nigel done, after we got back together in 2000, Nigel done 2 albums. And he just was not, he was like, going, this is getting out of hand. And you know, there's been a lot of different members in the choir. Since even before, I think we've had something like 28 drummers. It's like Spinal Tap. You know what I mean? But and it's all through that. But anybody that was close to me and friends of mine, that was in that reincarnation over the past few years was basically fired.
Mhm.
You know,
Like
they didn't want me around friends or, I mean, I have never cancelled a gig. I don't know why they're going on about that. The one I know they were going on about the cruise. You know, I know Larry really well. I explained everything to Larry about the cruise, the last, you know, the one before last.
right.
And I did actually have COVID. So it was like, and I spoke to, I would never have let Larry down. You know, he's a gentleman and he's a wonderful guy. And I was like going, then all this, them saying that I was, that said for them not to be allowed on the cruise and all this bullshit. I was like, what the goodness, what are they thinking? You know, but they had their agenda. There's a few things. There's some, you know, I was so happy when it's just, when it all ended. I mean, you know, I couldn't, you know, to get a letter like that, it was from the arrogance for a start, to fire me from a band that I started when I was 17, because they think that they've done, you know, a few albums after the, you know, and I just couldn't, I couldn't get my head around it, and I know that all the people who supported the Choir Boys, when that happened, and then they put this thing up, I'm Guy Griffin, I'm Paul Guerin, whether the Choir Boys like it or not. And I'm like, what the hell?
It's
I mean,
misleading. It's misleading to the fans. You know, you said that the other original members were upset about it, but of course, so were the fans. So they're touring here, opening for Enough's Enough. Chips Enough is playing in the Choir Boys. They're playing pretty small venues, and they're both playing under misleading circumstances. That band is not Enough's Enough.
This is, Jason, this is the other thing. I mean, when they went on the German tour, all of the shows were booked way in advance. And I said that, you know, we should not be doing this. And we should, yeah. And I think that just, when there was like Spike starting again, all I wanted was to have the band back to where it should be, and keep the brand of the Choir Boys alive properly, and not have, you know, to be seen to be doing this. And I was like, so there's always a problem with that. I mean, there's a huge problem at the minute because I'm not on the American tour and I'm not on the Canadian tour. And you know what? Basically stop using my image, because it's just not fair. People might go, oh, well, maybe they've made up. Spike's coming in again. And I'm not. The Choir Boys is me, Nigel, Chris Johnston, Rudy Richmond, you know, and it's we are doing a new album and we will be out on tour next year, but I am not playing in America. And stop doing false advertising, because I know that I know what's going on out there. You know how many people I know in America, and I mean how many they're doing these shows, and I'm, you know, maybe I should have went out with Donny V.
No, that's the pack. Yeah, the real singer. Yeah. That's the
But I'm
package.
just like, it just astounds me. I mean, you know, my son sent me a thing in Canada, and he's like, Dad, he says, you click on to buy a ticket, and there's a picture of you. How misleading is that?
It's completely misleading, and fans are getting younger. I saw you perform on the cruise. I know younger people, they love Choir Boys, and to go to see a show and be completely misled by a guitar player singing the songs, it makes no sense. If those guys want to not work with you, then they need to do something else. You're the face, the sound of that band, and what people want to see.
Well, you know, when people are saying to me, oh, they're a lot tighter now without you, how they like doing it. It's like every time I was like, going, what are people talking about? You know, the band was getting too hard rock for a start, and that was one of my. But it wasn't English rock and roll anymore to me. And so, and if I said anything other than was, you know, I could see the writing on the wall, but I didn't, you know, maybe I got fired basically. So I got fired from my own band,
Mhm.
and they think that that's all right. What did they think I was going to do? What did they think that I am going to do? What not do the choir boys anymore?
Well, one of the
What
things
gives
you did,
them the right to sing 7 o'clock?
absolutely,
What
nothing.
gives them the right to sing Hey You? You know, hey, we played on all them songs, you know. We played on them
One of the things you
first two
did,
albums, and certain people who are saying what they're saying, it's, you know. I was speaking to Jim Cregan about this,
Mhm.
you know, and I think people have very, very short memories
Mhm.
of who actually played on a lot of this stuff, you
Well,
know.
one of the things I like that you did to answer to this was you got the original lineup back, the lineup from those two albums. When you look at Wikipedia or online and you look at the members of the choir boys, your choir boys, you start at the beginning and you go until the end because these were the guys who were part of the band that everybody knew and loved,
Well,
not the other band.
Jason, Wikipedia, for some reason, there's somebody doing it, and every time it gets changed, it's being changed back to another thing. So I wouldn't I wouldn't even look at Wikipedia. I mean, it's just ridiculous. I mean, it's like, you know, if they want to carry on and do choir boys songs, do the songs that they can put their hand on their hearts, right, and say that they wrote without me. Let them do that, but certainly don't play songs that they did not write. The main
Like
guy
what
barely wrote.
happens? Is now, do you take legal action? What is the next step? Or are we going to have two choir
Well,
boys?
that would be telling you, of course. You know, there was nobody more upset and more angry about this than Guy Bailey, right? And that's why why do you think that Guy Bailey didn't play on any other albums? Why do you think that Nigel and Chris and everybody didn't play on any more records with? Because it's not the choir boys. It wasn't the choir boys. And it's like, you can hear it on them albums, you know? And it was my fault as well, in a way. But when you're being threatened to being sued all the time, right? People don't know the half of it, man. And which I was getting all the time. If I didn't do this, if I didn't do that, but I go, I'm bigger than this, and I'm not putting up with it. And then the lies that I've heard, and the, you know, saying that I didn't want to do it. I am like, I'm just astounded. Honestly, and so is my family and all my friends, because it's like, there's one thing about the choir boys. We all our families are very close, and they were very, very upset about what was going on, and that's why me and Guy got together and went, you know what? We're the fucking choir boys. They don't have a fucking right to this, you know? And it's like, they want to carry on and play them songs, play the songs that they wrote then, or play something that I have nothing to do with. You know, if that's what they're saying, that I never wanted to play new material or anything like that, and that's absolute bollocks. You know, the majority of the set was the first album. The Quireboys never used to rehearse. You know, the last ones that we never rehearsed because we were touring non-stop. We were touring all the time, and it was getting to the point where it was just like, it was ridiculous. And I said, it was me that I was like going, we have to have a rethink, especially after lockdown. I said, let's have a rethink and redo this properly and get it back together, you know? But at that point, I think everybody had made up their mind, you know? And by the way, I seen the interview with Griff. I never asked for double the money for a gig or anything. I was like, am I listening to the same guy that I got in the Quireboys when he was 19? Who I, you know, I looked at like as a brother to me. Took him to Ireland with me.
Still there, Spike? We froze.
When I moved there to write the second album. I didn't have to take him. Heartbreaking, because I still look at Griff like a little, you know, he'd never even done a gig with the Quireboys. I think it was at the Cat House with Jim Cregan doing the album. There was a lot of, you know, there was a lot of great musicians hanging around. Nigel admits he didn't play in Hey You. That was Pat Donaldson. That was my girlfriend's dad at the time. Pat Donaldson was a very famous bass player from Fotheringay, Fairport Convention. And when we wrote Hey You, it was in a, we had a key change in it. And Nigel was like, oh, you know, he admits that he's not the best bass player in the world. And he says, get Pat to do it. I'm shagging a bird up the rainbow. And he admitted to it, you know. And we all had such a good time. And there's certain people that won't admit to anything, you know.
Let's talk about what's.
Have I explained that well enough or not? But it's going to be stopped, mate. It's going to be stopped. It can't carry on. They're ruining the brand, you know, and they shouldn't be using my picture on tickets or anything like that when you're clicking on. And I don't, you know, if they think they're good enough, then they should play their songs.
Yeah, absolutely. It does have to stop. Let's talk real quick about what's coming up, because there is a Quireboys record, a real Quireboys record, and it's so sad that Guy passed. But at the time, you did write songs for this.
When I went up to see last summer when all this stuff happened, you know. When it became public that they'd fired me, so can you imagine? Everybody called me up. Everybody from the, you know, like, you gotta remember that me, Chris, and Nigel and Guy are still all best friends, because we've been through so much together, and they couldn't believe it. And it was the first thing was, fuck them, we're getting the Quireboys back together. And I says, oh, you're going to tread the boards now? He went, too right, I will, Guy Bailey. You know, he was like, yes. And I says, all right. So I went up to see him in London. We were, that's the picture of us outside in London with the Quireboys on the sign. And I says, come on. We went through all the songs that the real fans of the Quireboys would have known from when we played back in the 80s, in the early 80s, and songs that we'd forgotten, you know, songs that and I was like going, oh my God, do you remember this? And he went, and then Guy would go, do you remember this song? We never even recorded this one. And we were going through them, and I says, you know what, it'd be really good, because these songs would have been lost in time.
Mhm.
And I says, you know, we should record them. And then I was sitting there with them, and I says, do you know what? I says, I picked up the guitar and started playing. I said, should we write a song? And he went, what the fuck are we going to write a song about? Right? And I says, well, look out the window. Where are we? Where are we? And then he went, we're on Water Street. I said, exactly. And then we wrote about 4 or 5 songs that night. We went back on a role that not many, it was a privilege, such an honor to have a songwriting partner like him. And it was just wonderful to have that back again, and keeping everything basic and simple. We always had this thing of trying to write a song with 2 chords and never go to the minor, or never do this, or never, which it never really happened. But we had like this thing, oh, don't go to the minor because we can go to this instead. Keep it on the same chords and just change the melody or change the thing, which is, you know, and it was we had such good fun writing them songs. And it's like, where would we go from here? What would we do? How do we write? There's a great thing that I got sent it the other day when we wrote King of New York. Have you heard that song on the second album?
Yeah, on the second album, yeah.
Yeah, King of New York. We were in Vancouver, and Jim Valance, Bob Rock was doing the second album, and he was finishing off the Black album for Metallica, and so we were there for months. I mean, we were there for ages. Then he went, "Oh, go and write with Jim Valance," and we walked in. He writes for Bon Jovi, Bryan Adams. He's written some of the biggest hits of all time. And we were like, read Jim Valance's account of what happened with me and Guy Bailey. It was the funniest thing, because it is true. We just like, we didn't want to be there. Mm-hmm. And Guy said, have you got anything that we could? I says, well, I wrote this thing, King of New York. King of New York. And he went, what key is it in? And I said, I don't know, I've just sang it to you. He went, we'll do it in E. I said, all right. And then we just actually wrote that song so quickly just to get out of there. Mm-hmm. And then everybody loved it. And it's, you know, I miss all that. I miss having somebody to work off like that. That's why it was lovely to be with Jim Cregan the other day as well. And he was helping me going through the new songs that I'd written with Guy. And I knew that Guy would love it, because Jim helped so much on the first album, exactly like saying, why don't you put that in there? Put a new bit in there. You know, when you got fresh ears on your songs. Mm-hmm. And I thought that was lovely. So, and it was so wonderful to be with Jim again, and getting to do a real proper rock and roll album, you know, how it should be. And that's what we went for. We went, you know, it's not brain surgery. That's just, you know, a few chords, good melody, few baps, few wow, you know, just pure English rock and roll.
Did you know that Guy Bailey was ill when you guys were writing?
Yeah. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? The lifestyle that we led, you know, it's nothing to do with rock and roll, nothing at all. But even when we worked on a building site together, you know what, man? I'm from Newcastle. Mm-hmm. You know, well, I'll drink. You know, and it wasn't about living the rock and roll lifestyle, but I knew he wasn't well. But I never ever. I used to call him Lazarus, because I knew he'd come back every time, you know. And unfortunately, the last time was just a bit too far. So it was heartbreaking for me. And absolutely heartbreaking, because not many people know, when nobody knows what we went through, and how we were just constantly, for all the young bands that are maybe watching this, you got to have belief, you got to have a plan, you got to keep everything going, I must tell you, I am doing this for Guy Bailey now, and I promised him that I wouldn't let them have the name.
Yeah, well, I think that's the biggest reason to keep going, and not just the fans, not just for the music, not just for yourself, but for Guy as well, who was such a part. Spike, I was thinking, this is the kind of interview that's better to do in person. Of course, we're far apart, but maybe in a pub over a pint is the best way, because we didn't really even talk about some of those great stories about recording those first two albums. We'll have to have you come back when the new Choir Boys album comes out, the Real Choir Boys album.
I'd love to, because your show is called Wasting Time.
Correct. When we have plenty, and we have plenty to waste. But
do you know what? Isn't it wonderful? But Jason, it's been lovely to speak to you. But yeah, I hope I've tried to explain to everybody. I really haven't talked about it that much, Jason, about what happened.
I got the feeling that you wanted to take the high road, and that you didn't want to really get into one of these mudslinging things.
I just thought it was embarrassing. I didn't want to be that person that was slagging people off and threatening people and doing whatever that they were doing. I just thought it was, oh my goodness. But it was like, at the end of the day, it'll be, the punters, the fans, the people who love the Choir Boys will show who is the real rock and roll band, and it will be sorted, Jason. I mean, they have to stop doing what they're doing.
Do they have a trademark, Spike?
I own the trademark.
Yeah.
I own the trademark, Jason. I own everything. I own. It's like I've been through this. They've had letters. They've had everything. And if I have to take it to the next stage, then I will. But none of them would. I can't speak to them. None of them would speak to me, even after all the years that me and Griff had been together. There's certain people who keep us apart, and we don't talk anymore. And but I'm fine on that. He was. I remember when he did his group Glimmer, and I was so happy for him. And obviously, he wants to let them do their album then, but call it a different name. You shouldn't be doing this. I think that anybody with any common sense does that.
Well, that, having a singer who's playing guitar and looks nothing like it's just nothing what Choir Boys was about. It seems almost ridiculous.
Jason, it's to sing them songs properly is a hard job. I don't detune. I sing them in the right key. I do it properly, and and friends of mine that are singers know how hard it is to do what I've been doing basically since I was 17. And it's like, and every night I go on the stage, I give it 100%, and that's the whole reason that I think the Choir Boys, me and Guy Bailey, we always give it 100%. We always used to, even if we were exhausted, what we knew what it was like, because we started when we were so young. And that if if you'd been out that night, when you're a bunch of young lads together, you're having fun. And you're not going to get any sleep. Or if you're still a bit drunk from the night before, but you know what? You sweat that out on stage, and you get on with it, and you give it your best shot, And I can't wait to get back on stage again and kick that mic stand in the air and do what I'm supposed to be doing. I don't know why there was a thought that I would let them have the Quireboys name when it's my band. It was my band with Guy Bailey, Chris Johnston, and Nigel Mogg. I mean, it's just obvious. I know that we've done other albums, you know, and stuff like that. And it was not my, you know, if I said, well, let's play these, they're trying to say that I didn't want to play these songs and do this and do that. It's just ridiculous, man. And it's like, you know, let them put their hand on the heart and tell me, you know, if I've seen the interview that he done, or a few interviews that they've done, and it's just like, you know, especially the like it or not, whether Quireboys like it or not.
Terrible.
What the hell are they talking about?
Yeah, it's embarrassing. And
you know, and I know that because you know, I've seen what happened with LA Guns, and but at least with the LA Guns, some of them had they were in the, you know, some of the guys were in the band from the beginning. None of these guys were in the band from the beginning.
mm-hmm.
You know, I know there's a few people saying, "Oh, they've got a right to the name," but they don't. You know, it's nothing like the LA Guns. It's nothing like all these other bands that are Great White and everything like that everybody's going on about. You know, and it's just not. You know, and plus we're an English rock and roll. How many English rock and roll bands have you had on your show?
I've had a few. Not a ton on English, though. I told you,
do you know what
Finnish is hot right now.
Do you know what I'm doing at the weekend? I'm playing with Tyler.
Yeah, that's right.
That's his new wine he's got for sale. And his Art Tavern, Tyler's Art Tavern. We're doing the Hot Knives in Edinburgh on Saturday. Yeah. We haven't played the Hot Knives. We did an album years and years ago, just after my father died. And we're going to play that on Saturday for Tyler's birthday. A full band of the Hot Knives. So that's going to be really cool. Yeah. And then I'm playing the next weekend for Care After Combat, which is a charity that we support for our veterans.
Yeah.
Our veterans in the British forces. So I'm doing that next weekend. And then I'm back in the studio in August. So yeah.
When do you expect?
I can't wait. By the way, I've also got I've done an album, Spike's Free House, live at Sweden Rock with me and Simon Kirk from Free and Bad Company, and Luke Morley and Mark Stanley from Magnum, and that's going to be out soon. We've been holding on to that, and it sounds great. I'll send you a copy of it later.
Yeah,
that's coming out, and there's a lot of things happening, but the major thing is for the Quireboys to be back on tour next year, and everything is being sorted for that. I knew it was going to be. We thought it might have been this year, but obviously with Guy passing, it's been really difficult. But we will, for his memory alone, my best friend, for his memory, I am continuing with the Quireboys. So no matter what anybody thinks, I'm not giving up on this. We are doing a new Quireboys album, and we are going on tour, and I'm going to tour the R side of it, and I'm going to play proper English rock and roll, how people want to hear the Quireboys, and we're going to have fun and bring rock and roll back to what it should be.
I think you make a lot of people happy by saying that. People were really upset when this all went down. They couldn't believe it. And when you spoke up and got the guys back together, you made a lot of your fans happy and gave them faith that this wasn't, that they weren't going to get away with putting out this false product. So I would look forward to having you back to promote that record. I can't wait to see you guys here in the States and back doing what you do best and what we've lost for so long between pandemics and this ridiculous other life. It's time to see you guys do what you do best.
Well, thank you very much, Jason. It's been great chatting to you.
Yeah, absolutely.
I hope I haven't went on too much.
I don't think that's a. I
But
don't.
apparently, I think I'm, obviously it's got a bit late now. I've got to drive up to Scotland tomorrow morning,
Mhm.
and I do still drink, Jason.
Mhm. In English,
I
I
do
think
have a few pints,
it's in your
but you know
DNA.
what? it's rock and roll, mate, and I am from Newcastle.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Spike. And where can people check you out? You don't do social media. How do people stay up on you?
SpikeQuireboys.com.
Website.
Oh, but I've got that album that I've just done
Mhm.
for my mom, Spike's Late Night Songbook. That's Spike's Late Night Songbook 2.
The acoustic stuff, right?
But it's just me playing the guitar by myself, yeah. And
Yeah.
it was actually Guy Bailey who came up with that. Because when we were in lockdown, I don't know, when you couldn't see your mom, or, when you couldn't meet anybody or hug.
Mhm.
And my mom said what she missed the most was when I came back from tour and I'd play her songs, her favorite songs in the house. So I recorded an album for her, and I sent it to Guy Bailey, and he went, "You should release this." And I was like, "Guy, I'm playing like Edelweiss, I'm playing like all these my mom's favorite songs," and I says, "What would I call?" He says, "Call it Spike's Late Night Songbook." He was always good with good titles, and so I've done Spike's Late Night Songbook 2 now, which my mom has picked all the songs for again.
How cool. Yeah.
And it comes with a DVD, but thank God, I want to thank everybody because it's sold out already. So thank you, everybody, for buying it.
Yeah. And
it's on SpikeQuireboys.com.
Yeah, SpikeQuireboys.com. We'll have the link in the description, so check it out and stay up on it. And Spike, I look forward to seeing you again.
You too, pal.
Thank you. And thank you, everyone, for
God bless you. Great to speak to you. See you in Vegas soon.